Managing a small team or business comes with a unique set of challenges. With limited resources and manpower, it's easy for things to feel chaotic and out of your control. How can you, as a leader, accomplish your goals while keeping your team engaged, effective, and accountable? This podcast will give you practical strategies you can implement now to lead your team or business to reach its fullest potential. Welcome to the Organizing Chaos podcast with your host, Danny Coleman.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of Organizing Chaos, where we talk about small, practical strategies for small teams and small businesses. So today I wanted to continue with my Organize the Chaos process. I've been breaking down the process that I use for or when I consult with small businesses and small teams, and it's an 8-step process. We're on step 5 now, so if you haven't heard the previous steps, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to those ones. I will have a playlist on YouTube that kind of puts these all together. I did a couple steps in the process. I took a break because I had a couple of exciting episodes that I wanted to let release, and so I picked it back up. So we're on to step 5 now, but just kind of recover some of the things that we talked about before. The first thing I always start out with is mindset. And again, I think I've said this plenty of times before, but I have this process available to anyone who wants it. Just shoot me an email, danny@dannycoleman.me. I'd be happy to send it to you. And I'm actually working on worksheets that anyone can really use to work through this process on their own. My consulting, of course, I bring my experience and the background that I have with working with small businesses in management and operations. However, anyone with the willpower can do this. And of course, I also bring accountability. That sometimes is the hardest part when people are doing this, is keeping themselves accountable to making progress through the process. But I can trust, or you can trust, if you trust the process, then you'll be able to see some success. So if you're doing it on your own, please feel free to shoot me an email anytime. I'd love to help you through it. And then, of course, if you're interested in working with me personally, please feel free to reach out. So rewind a little bit to what I was saying as far as covering what we've covered so far. And then I'm going to jump into what this 5th step in the process is. The first thing that I always start out with was mindset, right? So it's important to understand that your business is a vehicle. It's supposed to get you somewhere, it's supposed to take you somewhere, not just create a job for yourself. If you want to just create a job for yourself, this isn't the podcast for you. But if you want a business that can eventually run without your micromanagement or your direct involvement on a day-to-day basis, if you want to have some freedom, then this is what you got to do. You got to get clear on your mindset, because if there's a lack of clarity on the top, then there's going to be a lack of clarity throughout the whole organization. So the first thing we've worked on was mindset. What is the relationship between you and your business? Are you going to still be an employee within your business and serve the business in an employee type function in some way? Or are you ready to try to figure out how you can just sit in the owner's box and let someone else manage the day-to-day operations of your business? So the first thing is mindset. And again, this isn't about thinking that you can just flip a switch and all of a sudden your business is going to run on its own. That's not going to happen. But mindset is important for having a clear goal or a destination that you're shooting for, which then helps you with decision-making process with everything else in your business. So mindset first, then we do the next step is then keep versus delegate. What are the things that you're going to retain to continue to do for your business versus the things that you're going to stop doing and either outsource to a third-party contractor or another member of your team. So once you've got that stop doing list, that list of things you're not going to do any longer in order to free up your time so that you can focus on what you're good at, we're going to move on to step 3, which is clarify and offload. So we take that stop doing list and then we create positions that capture all of that work. And so that's how we make sure all those things that you're going to stop doing start getting done by somebody else. And so once we've done that, we move on to step 4, which is feedback, rollout, and rehire. Essentially, now that we have this untangled and clearer version of your business, we want to take your current staff and see if they are still the right fit for these kind of newly clarified positions. And some of them are going to stick, some of them aren't. But the good thing about this process, and specifically about this part of the process, is that you're going to shake out the losers or the people who you don't want on your team. You're going to shake them out because they're not going to like this change. But the people who are rock stars, the people who are really going to help you, are going to stick around, and they're going to like the fact that there's some structure and some clarity around what it is that they're supposed to do or not supposed to do, or who they're supposed to go to for certain questions and whatnot. And so without rehashing that, just like I can't stress enough how much the people who are rock stars, the people who you're like, wow, man, I'm so glad that we got them. How do we get this person? The way you keep them is by doing this, specifically this part of the process when you've clarified things. So that was step 4. So now that we've clarified what you want from the business, what you're going to do versus not do, and then what your team's going to do, we need to know what your processes are going to look like. And that's what step 5 is. That's what I'm going to talk about today a little bit, is establishing a process hub. And this process hub, also, we're going to be looking at what processes you do currently have, making sure that there's a place for them to be housed, right? Some place for anyone on the team can go and look to see how to do a thing. But then we're also going to be looking at any of the processes that you might not have documented yet, and we're going to pull those into the process hub as well. But that ties in more to step 6, and so I'll talk about step 6. You know what? Let's just do it. Let's just do 5 and 6 because they really go hand in hand. So step 5 is establish the process hub. Step 6 is documenting the processes. So these really do go hand in hand. I'd not thought about that beforehand. So we'll go ahead and knock out 2 birds with 1 stone today. So process hub, what is this? What do I mean when I say process hub? What I'm saying is right now, let me just ask, where are your processes? How do people know how to get things done? Are they on a spreadsheet somewhere? Are they on a piece of paper? Are they, on a clipboard somewhere? Is there a binder somewhere? More than likely, if you're like most small businesses, you don't really have your processes all that well documented. This isn't something to be ashamed of. It's very, very common because when a business first gets going, it is in chaos mode. And that's kind of how it almost has to stay in order to figure out what it is. What is this business? What is it doing? How does it look and how does it feel? So if there's some chaos going on right now, don't feel bad. This is where we rein that in. So the process hub, to get back to that, what I mean by that is where are you keeping your processes so that people can consult them when needed? So my recommendation is it's an online platform. It's called Process Street. It's extremely affordable. You can use it for up to like as much as $15. You can get away with just having a $15 account per month. And what it does is it helps you to keep your processes in one place, and you can document them using all types of media. So for instance, let's say you have a lot of computer processes, or you have a lot of processes where a video would be really helpful, or maybe you need a link to some external document or something like that. That's what Process Street does really well. You can put screenshots in there. You can obviously type text, bullet points, checklists. It goes. I won't completely tear apart, what all Process Street does, but I can tell you that I've used it successfully for the last 5 or 6 years of the different businesses that I've worked for or with, and this one consistently gets the best results. And it's also very simple, which is the biggest thing. The more complicated you make this, the less likely it is you're going to stick with these processes and that people will be checking them and using them, or that you'll be keeping them updated. So the big problem here with most small businesses is that processes really they don't exist anywhere. They exist in people's heads. And that is the worst thing that you can do. Again, I'm not trying to make you feel bad about this, but feel bad a little bit because it is the worst thing you can do. There's no way to hold people accountable to a process that's in your head. You might think that they understood it, but if you don't have it written down somewhere, then you can't really expect people to accurately and consistently execute the process correctly. It's just you have to have it written down somewhere. So you can use an online hub like Process Street. I worked with a coffee company before that had really well-designed physical manuals. I thought they were great. It made more sense for their business to have physical manuals rather than something online. And so they had these well-designed, fun-to-use checklists for the different processes they had around pulling shots or maintaining the cafe and things of that nature. So people would have, you had like a book for the morning shift and a book for the evening shift. So that's one way to do it. You could also just simply have these things print them out every morning and put them on clipboards in the appropriate places in your business so that people know where to use them. And of course, small business can, there's physical businesses with storefronts and things like that where I think physical makes a little bit more sense. But if you're online or if you're virtual, then having them accessible via cloud, from the cloud, from any web browser, really makes a lot more sense too. You can also have a combination of the two. It's your business. You do what you want. But Process Street is really one of the ones that I recommend the most. Trello is another good way to document processes. Trello is a Trello. It's a project management platform. And you can use it for anything you want, though. So for instance, to give you an example, my team, the investing work that I do, I invest in real estate, in case you didn't know. We have a process in Trello for when anytime a house comes in, we fix up, me and my partner, we fix up properties that need rehab. And so whenever a potential property comes in, there's a template in Trello that my virtual assistant copies and pastes, and that template is basically the thing that she needs to fill out. so that we have the information we need to make a decision on whether or not this is a property we want to move forward with. And so every stage of the process has a different template that they can use, so that as we move this potential investment property through our process, we can look at that template and be like, okay, do we get the questions answered that we need so that we can actually move on to the next decision that needs to be made, or move on to the next phase. And so that's just an example or case study, I guess, if you will, about just how we use it. But you can use these in whatever way makes the most sense for your business. But again, that's what I do when I consult, is as I try to bring that experience about knowing, how your business operates. But how your business operates. So think to yourself, if I have something online that people access through a web browser or an app on their phone, is that something that'll get used? Or if you think to yourself, if I have something that's physical, it's a piece of paper, it's a binder, or it's a booklet that people have to work through and physically check off, things and sign off on the bottom of it and whatnot. You need to have something, though. That's the thing. You cannot have accountability. You can't have predictability, dependability, all those abilities. You can't have them if you don't have a place where they can all be a central place where all your processes are stored. This is your Bible, if you will, for your operations manual, for that matter. If you ever think about selling your business in the future at some point, most entrepreneurs or people who are buying businesses are not going to buy a business where the processes aren't documented. They are going to ask you where your process is documented, because essentially they want to know that you have a manual on how to run your business. And so that's what this step 5 is all about. It's what I do, again, when I'm consulting, is I try to help people figure out what's the right process hub for them. But if you want my recommendations right now, it's Process Street, Trello, and then you can also use Google Drive. That's another good online one. If you're not familiar with Google Drive or G Suite for business, I couldn't function without it. But it's a great place for you to be able to store whatever you want. It's just like Word doc online. If you don't know about Google Drive already, they have all the word processing stuff, just like how Office Suite would have, like a PowerPoint competitor, a Word doc processor, all that stuff. But anyways, that's another place you can use if you want to be able to store them online somewhere. And then, of course, obviously, I don't have to tell you, but you can go to your local printer and get some books bound, where it's similar to the one that I was mentioning earlier, the coffee shop, where you can have these books bound where it's like, all right, this is the book for the morning shift, and this is the book for the evening shift, and all these things have to be filled out before people get to leave. So anyways, that's what step 5 is. Now I'll go ahead and talk about step 6, which is documenting these processes. So again, we're taking everything that you currently have a written process for. If you've got them, we're pulling that in, and then we're identifying the processes that you don't have documented yet, and then we're looking at those. Now, the best thing to do here is to outsource this, because if you try to put all of this documentation on yourself, you probably will never get it done. And secondly, you're not going to be the most informed person doing it. So if you have a team already who's doing things and it's all in everyone's head, you get whoever does it the most often to be the one to write it down. So once you have these things written down, we can figure out how we're going to get them into the hub. So I have a few questions that I ask for every time that I do a process, or I help people clarify their processes. So I start out with these questions. What am I trying to do? How am I trying to do it? Could there be a better way? Is it clear, specific, and or measurable? Is it an essential activity of the business? And if there are areas of judgment needed in this process, is the objective clear enough for the person executing to fill in the gaps? So if not, there should be a process for how you then train someone to kind of give them that judgment. Because basically you've got, when you have a process, you've got two things happening. You got the stuff that they can just check off, right? Like click this button or sweep this floor. But then you've got judgment call stuff where it's like, if the floor is dirty, sweep it. That's judgment call stuff. So when you have judgment call stuff, you either need to be able to have, really, you start off having trust in an employee, and you just trust, oh yeah, Joe really knows how to they know when the shop floor is dirty. I don't have to spell that out for them. But if you really want to get good at processes, then it's better to write that sort of thing down, make it really clear. Because when you have clear processes, you can have clear expectations. And when you can have clear expectations, you can have accountability. You can know who's performing well in your business and who is not performing well. And when someone messes up, instead of feeling nervous about telling them that they messed up, you can be like, hey, are you familiar with the process on sweeping the floor? Here's the checklist. Did you check these things? Okay, start using this from now on. All right. And then boom, then you're done. No one's feelings are hurt. Now they know how to do it. That's all anyone wants to do. And now, of course, if you have someone who's a bad egg, then they just need to leave your business. But that's a different topic. So those are the questions that I ask for. So again, if you're outsourcing any of this stuff to your teammates or your team members, then have them go through those questions first. Again, what am I trying to do? How am I trying to do it? Could there be a better way? Is it clear, specific, and measurable? Is it an essential activity of the business? And then if there are areas of judgment, is the objective clear enough? Management by objective is the best way to manage because it takes the responsibility of spelling every little thing out off of you or the manager, and it puts it on the person who's doing it. So hopefully that makes sense. So those questions, and again, if you want any of this stuff, just shoot me an email, danny@dannycoleman.me. I'd be happy to share it with you. So the next thing, after you kind of ask those questions before you approach the objective, is who's responsible and who's executing. Now, you might have managers, and this is a good way to explain this, is managers are typically responsible. Technicians, your people on the floor, are the people who are executing, right? So the manager might be responsible for having a clean shop, but the technicians, the people who are working under him or her, are the ones executing. So you need to make sure that that's clear, who's responsible and who's executing. If you got a manager, you usually don't want them spending time executing, right? If you want them to be managing your shop, your coffee shop or something like that, for instance, you don't want them to be the person scrubbing the floors and sweeping and whatnot. If you can help it, you want them to stay in the management zone where they're getting results through other people, which is how you develop them to get better and better. And then honestly, these people are the ones who end up growing up to run your business. So when you're thinking about who's responsible versus who's delegating, your options are four. You have four options. You either do it yourself, right? Because whoever's responsible has to ask themselves this: do it yourself, delegate it, which again, that's an example of the manager giving the responsibilities of cleaning the shop to the employees they have. Outsource it, right? That's a third-party contractor. Then that's like if, for example, you have someone come in and clean your shop every evening, or you eliminate it. You don't do it at all. If you can't do one of those four things, or if you can't do one of those three things, do it yourself, delegate it, or outsource it, you got to get rid of it. That's how you figure out who's accountable. And then the last thing is, does it support the team culture? Now, I know that this question might seem a little vague, like how do you apply team culture to sweeping the floor? Well, let me give you an example. What's your team culture like, right? Is it, do you take pride in your work? Do you take pride in your workplace? Okay, kind of going with this cafe theme, then if you take pride in your workplace, then it should be clean, right? And if it should be clean, well, what has to get done for it to be clean? So that's just an easy example about what I'm getting at when I say, does it support the team culture? So maybe let me try to think of a bad example would be performing something that's not entirely necessary, right? If you can't, basically the question you need to do this is, can you tie the process that you're asking someone to do? Can you tie it to the team culture? How does this support what it is we're all about? That's really what I'm kind of trying to get at here with that question. Does it support team culture? Because, for instance, maybe a process isn't a good process because it doesn't respect people's time. Maybe it requires too much of people. Maybe it requires things of people that they're not properly trained on. So really this question, what it does, it's more like a stop check. It gets you to think about the process before you sign off and say, this is officially something I want everyone to be doing, or I want someone to be doing. So it's really a matter of, it's not like a pass or fail. It's if it's failed, then you need to think about, well, why are you doing this in the first place? And then again, you might go back to eliminating it, or you might realize how it supports the team culture, which that's going to help you be able to explain it and outsource it to people much better. You can give them an understanding as to why it's important. When you ask someone to do something and they don't understand why it's important, you will get inconsistent results, and usually results that fall short of your expectations. So that's what that question's really getting at. So just to recap those real quick, it's you want to start off with, does your process have a clear objective? What am I trying to do? How am I trying to do it? Could there be a better way? Is it clear, specific, and measurable? Is it an essential activity of the business? And if there are areas of judgment, is the objective clear enough for the executor to fill in the gaps? And again, if not, there should be training involved. That's what that means. If you want to get good judgment out of your employees, you have to spend time training them. Otherwise, if it doesn't require judgment, you can just give them a list and say, hey, do this. Go to the store, buy milk, bread, and eggs. Then again, I'm recapping again, who's responsible and who's executing. Remember, you got those four options. Do it yourself, you delegate it, you outsource it, or you get rid of it. And then lastly, does it support the team culture? And like I said, this really is just about making sure you understand why this is getting done. And if you understand why it's getting done, then that allows you to clearly communicate to your team why it's important and why it matters to you. So hopefully that was helpful. This is really a lot to unload. I mean, like I said, most small businesses don't have good, clear processes. And so what this is going to do, this is really going to change your business in a big way, because it's going to show you how much work you've really got going on. It's going to get stuff out of your head. It's going to allow you to have clearer instructions for people, which then allows you to hold them accountable. It also helps them to know when they're doing well. And so all of these things are important for clear communication in the business, which communication, if I had to boil everything down as far as what I do when I consult or all the problems that I've seen in businesses over my last 10 plus years in small business, it all comes down to communication. And all of these things that we're doing in this process that I'm explaining to you guys, and specifically in this step, these 2 steps, helps get clarity around communication. So anyways, again, hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me an email, danny@dannycoleman.me. I'd be happy to share what I've just mentioned to you. I've got it in a process street actually. And so I'd be happy to share that with you, print it out for you, whatever. If you have any kind of interest in ever being on my show, I'd love to have you. If you've got something of value to share with a small business audience, shoot me an email, danny@dannycoleman.me. I feel like I've said my email a million times now. And then you can follow me on Instagram, get to know me better there at I am Danny Coleman. Hope you guys are doing well and have an awesome rest of your day. See ya.
Want more? Go to dannycoleman.me to download Danny's free small business hiring guide, which includes tips, templates, and tools, plus a step-by-step process you can use to find and keep high-quality employees for your small team or business.